Oh, it says attendees still on hold, so maybe start broadcast. Maybe more attendees
Yeah.
will show up if we actually start the broadcast. So I'd say start the broadcast.
Yes.
No?
And we have third person on the line, which is fantastic. Okay, so thank you so much for joining today. I believe everyone is on mute that our attendees, but I'm just going to ask anyone joining if you could put yourself on mute for the duration of the presentation. You can type out your questions whenever you like, and I would love to answer them all at the end. When we get onto the question section, I invite you to unmute yourself, and at this point it would be great to allow for a more organic discussion, so please don't be shy. Also note that on the handouts I have the slides and the toolkit that I refer to throughout also as well. To introduce this webinar is the start of a series launching Feedback's toolkits, and they're designed to make organising celebratory food waste feasts easier. And in doing so, we want to expand the global food waste movement. The project to make these kits has been going on for around 9 months, and it has been possible thanks to the support of the Rockefeller Foundation. So a huge thank you to them. I wanted to say a bit about ourselves as an organisation as well. Feedback is an environmental charity that campaigns to end food waste at every level of the food system, and we catalyse action on eliminating food waste globally, working with governments, international institutions, businesses, NGOs, grassroots organisations and the public to change society's attitudes towards wasting food. It all started in 2009 when Tristram Stewart, who many of you might know, wrote a book which I think, and many others do too, changed the public attitude and spread the word globally on the issue. At the same time, he and many others organised Feeding the 5,000 London, where 5,000 people were fed from food that would otherwise have gone to waste. And the short story is that it was a huge success, and there have now been 44 events like this across the world, including Australia, Belgium, France, UK, Norway, and of course, the US of A. So Feedback has a range of other really exciting campaigns as well, but we think events are a really exciting way to engage people and get people excited and let them know that they can do something as well. To introduce myself and my colleague Dominica on the phone as well. I'm Feedback's Events and Campaigns Coordinator, and I've been working with Feedback for 2 years doing Feeding 5,000s and community scale events across the world. We most recently got back from Feeding 5,000 LA and Berlin, both very different events. In LA, we had an amazing chilled summer pozole, and in Berlin, we were dressed up as piggies, spreading the word on the Pig Idea campaign. And you can look on Facebook for pictures of both of these very fun events. Dominica, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Thanks so much, Pascal. So yes, that was Pascal. She didn't mention her name, but Pascal Robinson. And I'm Dominica, and I am Feedback's Head of Programs and Campaigns. But I actually started with Feedback before Feedback was Feedback about 4 years ago as the events coordinator for Feeding the 5,000. And since then, we've had about over 40 Feeding the 5,000. So events are really at the heart of what Feedback does, and they're a great way of engaging new audiences and decision makers, which is why we do them so much. So I'm really thrilled to be here. Pascal's going to be doing the majority of the talking, but I'll chip in when and if I've got anything useful to say.
Which is most of the time, Dommy. So we've got lots to get through in this presentation. I really wanted to get into the nitty-gritty and make it really helpful for those wondering how to start. So on that note, let's start. A lot of you might be wondering, what is a disco chop? A choop. And disco chop is another name for disco soup. It's an event that started in Berlin as a Schnippel disco, and it's since expanded across the world, including Kenya and South Korea. And these are events where people chop, cook, and they eat a meal together, all made from food that would otherwise have gone to waste. There is also a DJ or some live music so that you can chop while you bop and get your disco on, and that makes them really fun. It shows that you can party with a purpose as well. So there are lots of ways to name it. I might refer to it throughout the presentation as a disco chop or a disco soup, but please know that I'm referring to the same concept. I wanted to draw your attention to this picture on the right where we were in the Victoria and Albert Museum in the Raphael Gallery, chopping next to some of the world's most famous paintings. And so be aware that disco chops can lead you to some very delicate situations. The aim of them, much like many of our campaigns at Feedback, is to shine a light on the global food waste scandal and to show the delicious solutions. We want to raise awareness of this as a huge social and environmental issue and show that people can do something. Another thing to add is that one place where disco soup has grown massively is France, and you can see the documents on disco soup where they outline the principles of their disco soups online. So when you're searching, make sure to search disco soup, S-O-U-P-E, and the link is on the slide too. Another few things that you should know is that disco soups are generally free, they're open to all, and they stick to serving food that would have otherwise gone to waste. Domi, I don't know if I've missed any other core principles of a disco chop.
Well, just so you know, disco principles are also called discommandments. That was the French disco supers came up with a list, and they're very similar to the feeding the 5,000 commandments. And they're basically free access to all. Everyone's invited. It's always using food that is gone to waste, and it's celebratory. And it's not owned by anyone. It's very much sort of within the principles of open sourceness, of networks, and that's really the strength of it. And one of the other things to note is that there's no sort of corporate sponsorship or corporate partnership within these events. We do accept donations from companies in terms of in-kind equipment and food, but they're never partners in the event, and that's one of the crucial elements because it ensures the disco soup independence. It ensures that they're not co-opted, and it also allows us to actually exert pressure on the companies that we want to engage with and we want to tackle food waste with.
Yeah, fantastic points, Domi. To launch right into the everyday, how do you do it? Venue is obviously hugely important, and it's one of the biggest first questions. I would recommend researching places with a large hall or a communal space and a kitchen. But another idea is finding an open site which will enable a chef with filled kitchen and a tent to pop up gas pots and make something really delicious from whatever you make. That way you can even have it potentially in a public place as well, and that is really open and invites people to come in off the streets, which is fantastic. When you're speaking about the event, make sure that you explain that it is a charity event, explain what you're trying to do, and you might find it easier to get a discount or free. We would also recommend visiting as soon as possible so that you know how it will run in terms of flow and who will be stationed at different areas of the venue. And you want to take photos because you always forget what it looks like, and it's really good to refresh that memory. So that kind of leads on to partnerships and where do you find your venue from? Where do you find your food from? Partnerships are crucial to a disco chop and to building the global food waste movement and allowing us to make this change. We want to build relationships and coalitions through these events, and it also is very helpful for sourcing the resources easily as well. We have found many times as well that working together with organisations allows them to build really human relationships, and amazing initiatives have come out of both disco chops and Feeding 5,000. There'll be a lot more on that in the toolkits, which you can contact anyone at any time to get hold of. The email for that is hello@feedbackglobal.org. So make sure to email us if you want to have a look at them. Who to involve? I would definitely recommend local food organising groups, community kitchens, redistribution charities, and local government. Everyone can help, and you'd be surprised how many organisations that aren't necessarily involved in food issues or environment issues really are excited about the event and want to get involved. Domi, do you have any other types of
Yeah,
organisations that might be interested?
I'd say especially educational organisations and schools as well are
Yeah,
really great partners in the event, and it's really, really good to engage young people. Also, faith communities. Disco Soups are a really lovely way of bringing together communities of different faiths, and sometimes we're able to use some of their spaces as well. They're usually very amenable to having Disco Soups in their halls and community areas as well, um, and engaging older people as well. Some great disco soups have just an absolute cross section of all different ages and people in society. So I think don't just think of people that are like you. Try and have as diverse a group of people as possible participating.
yeah, very, very important. On the note of diversity, we want to then get onto food sourcing, and that's where it gets really fun and exciting as well. You, wherever possible, want to use the event to tell the story of food waste and how it occurs at every level of the supply chain. Diversity of your types of food is great as well, because if you can make a menu of 3 or 4 dishes, people think, wow, this is not scraps and leftovers, this is delicious produce which is going to waste. We really recommend researching local farmers and supermarkets, local warehouses, and maybe even thinking about, when you're talking to farmers, gleaning. For anyone that doesn't know, gleaning is when you go to a farm, harvest produce which would otherwise go to waste, and of course eat it. And there have been lots of disco shops which have used gleaned food, and people really enjoy that experience as well, and it builds a lot of excitement about the event prior as well. Having said this, we really want to emphasize that when you are going into food sourcing and building links, you want to definitely reach out to organizations that already utilize food surplus, because you don't want to take food from existing initiatives and hungry mouths. After food sources have been arranged, you then want to think about the pickup, whether that's by bike, truck, donkey, and you want to sort that out as soon as possible and make sure that the food is refrigerated right up until the event. And of course, don't forget your driver. Many people are not comfortable driving trucks, so that's another important top tip from us.
And just to add, it really depends what scale your event is at, because if you are starting with it's your first disco soup and you haven't ever done it before and you're not sure how many people you're going to have, and say you're aiming for about 50 or 100 people, our fantastic partners in crime in London, during Exchange East and Brigida, had a very, very trustworthy pair of suitcases that they took from collection to collection and used public transport as well. So obviously look after your backs and don't carry more than you can. But it's also, depending on the number of people involved, you can be quite creative with transportation, especially if you live in a city where people don't tend to have cars.
That's a really interesting fact, Domi. I never knew that Dinner Exchange used to do it with suitcases. That's really fun. Yeah, so again, the creativity of these events, you can really find lots of different ways to make it work too. I think then it would be great to chat about volunteers. So volunteers are hugely important to making the event happen, and volunteer coordination should not be underestimated. What we find works really well is arranging a team of your core leaders, and they basically lead a station, they direct the new volunteers and event attendees, from everything to the washing of the hands to how they should chop, where they should leave their things. And then you have one maybe volunteer lead or head sous chef who reports to the head chef and kind of takes everything to the kitchen themselves, maybe. Having said this, catering is, of course, not the only part of a disco shop, and anyone that offers their skills is definitely welcome. You want to find people that could lead on the social media, photography, crafting, the DJ, of course, and decoration. So make sure beforehand, so that you're not being asked 1,000 questions throughout the event, that you brief them really well beforehand. We find a phone call is a really great way of doing that, and giving them as much information as possible about the event. People are so helpful and kind when it comes to these events, so I don't think that you will have any problem finding people, but some places that we do recommend finding volunteers are the local groups organising on food themselves, local volunteering sites, faith groups, and even schools if it works and is appropriate locally. Another idea is, of course, posting through your own social media and your own networks to get volunteers more engaged as well. So then the really important, I keep saying important, everything's important, but something that's really crucial is, of course, the equipment. And that very much links into the budget as well. So when you are looking at the equipment, we have equipment lists, which we would be more than happy to share with anyone looking to organize an event. The great way of finding a lot of this equipment, which includes, as you can see in these pictures, chopping boards, tablecloths, the knives, every little cooking item, utensil. The great way to find all of this is contacting food charities, community kitchens, and other groups who organise catering events frequently. We find that these people are the experts and they may be able to lend you equipment too. Equally, if you have to buy equipment, you could donate it to these organisations after. Our top tip for this,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, Tommy.
No, I was just going to say, sometimes professional kitchens have really heavy chopping boards, the professional grade ones, and sometimes if you have to carry them, and if you need 20 or 30 of them, they can be a bit heavy. And I would never want to promote one particular company, but a company that rhymes with Mia has very light, pliable chopping boards that are perfect for disco soups, and it's a worthwhile investment to buy a few of those, and as Pascal said before, donate them afterwards. But sometimes that's the one item that I'd say it's really worth borrowing, and then sometimes we've encouraged people to bring their own knives, again depending on the venue and on the age range of people involved, but it's sometimes you can crowdsource the equipment as well.
Yeah, that's a really fantastic point, Tommy. On the top tip, I would always say have double the amount of large plastic containers. This is for washing your veggies, washing up the equipment after, serving the food, chopping it. They are invaluable, and you can find really good ones which are food safe at the same rhyming company, maybe Trikea. So then, thinking about the budget as a whole, I think that the equipment is where it's hardest to avoid the spending. So finding a small amount of funding is often possible from local governments. Also, your organisation might have a small amount for awareness raising events. However, you really can be thrifty with these events, and it has been possible in the past to do the entire thing for free. This does take time because you need to build up these relationships which allow you to source the resources for free, and that, as listed on the slide, is sponsored trucks, the venues, chefs and volunteers. But one thing to note is that the bar itself can be a way to make back the money that you may have spent. And we would really recommend sourcing some toast beer, which is launching in the US. Or has it already launched in the US, Dommy?
The crowdfunder is live, but we expect the first brew to be ready for the weekend of July 4th, and it'll be available on the East Coast. And who knows how long it'll take us to make it available nationwide. But it's that's in the works. But obviously toast ale wherever you can get it. But we've also managed to do local brews using bread in collaboration with local breweries such as in Berlin. So even if you can't have some toast ale, there's always other bread waste ale that you can try and collaborate with a brewery on, or just even normal beer. Bars are really, as Pascal said, really great ways of getting a bit of money. But anytime you do serve alcohol, you have to be mindful of the audience and in terms of young people and maybe people that are at risk. So just making sure that you sort of think about everyone to make sure that it's legal. And sometimes you also have to have a specific license to serve alcohol. And in certain countries, it's pretty cheap. It's just a one-off payment of $25. But just double check that anything that you do serve, you're entitled to do so. You've got all the requirements.
And for those of you that don't know, toast is an amazing, delicious beer that is brewed with bread that would otherwise have gone to waste. There's one slice in each bottle, and it funds food waste initiatives across the world like Feedback. So we would definitely recommend it. And there's a link to find out more information in a slide further on as well. Now we are done with our small plug. I really wanted to chat about promotion and media as well. Once you've got the skin and bones of the event put together, this is where it gets really fun and creative. And we recommend that you finalize your media alert and send it to local media. Never underestimate local media 4 weeks before the event. It can be short, it doesn't have to go into great details, but it gets them excited and hyped up for the event as well. Wherever you've got friends maybe that are designers, or if you've got the funding, it's beautiful to have lovely posters and a Facebook banner, and always important as well to develop a tweet and see how the conversation online is developing as well. Talking about different channels, of course, social media is really important, but you never want to underestimate the traditional media. As I've just said, contacting local media and getting it in local advertising and in print is really important too. And that helps
And
it to
just yeah, and just to add, just you can be quite creative and for example, lots of food blogs, if you've got sort of active food blogs in your town or city, inviting them to sort of maybe have contribute a potential recipe that you'll try out at the Disco Soup, and asking them to cover the event is really cool as well. Food Instagrammers as well. The whole sort of food scene on Instagram is massive, and really giving that social purpose through Disco Soups can be a really effective sort of promotional strategy as well. So yeah, a mix of social, online, and traditional media is a really good approach. And then also just the old school way of hitting the streets and with posters and flyers, and actually that's a really great opportunity to speak to people in your community and tell them about the event and really sort of start conversations about it, and for people to walk past and see that the event is happening. So we've put up posters in libraries, in train stations, community spaces, sort of do ask for permission, especially in places, official places where it makes sense. And depending on your different countries have different rules about putting up posters just generally around town. So we'll defer to what is normally accepted as and allowed before telling you things that might get us in trouble. So we'll defer to local rules on that side. But for example, in New York, they really don't mind chalking around an event, so you're free to chalk on the sidewalks. Whereas in LA, they discourage it completely and they don't allow it. So you can, yeah, even in the same country, different cities have different rules. But yeah, just be creative. My favourite story is from Brighton, where they collaborate, where the organisers of actually Feeding the 5000 collaborated with a group of artists that knit, and they created these ugly fruit and vegetable um, crochet little dolls that they left around town, and people were really confused as to what all these wonky fruits and vegetables were doing around town. But so it can be quite enigmatic, as long as you then connect it to a sort of more explicit promotional plan that links to your event. Don't be too enigmatic, but be as creative as you can be, because people really respond well to that.
I really like all of those additions, Domi. Thank you. If you are a total novice to media as well, you again are more than welcome to email us, and we have a really good, clear guide, I would say, on promotion, media, and communications for events, and that really goes from the basics. So please feel free to reach out for that. I think now we're essentially getting on to general event preparation and some other things that you may not think about in trying to get the skin and bones together. So if capacity is an issue at the venue, I want to emphasize that, again, I'm emphasizing a company here, but we found Eventbrite very helpful for recording your numbers. Facebook is also helpful, but of course you need to bear in mind drop-off rates for a free event. Recording the event is massively important as well, and often it can get overlooked when you're busy and running around. So photographers and videographers are welcomed. And as said before, hashtags and tweeting is a great way to keep an eye on who's talking about the event as well. Another huge aspect of Feedback's events, but also the disco suit movement at large, is to really minimize waste wherever possible. So we always have biodegradable crockery, and with that we make sure that there is organic food waste collection and compost, that organics, that are taken away. So your venue might have this, but given how far we have to come, it could be very much time saving to research into companies that could pick up your waste. We really recommend community haulers as well. And there's a lot more info on that in the Disco Chop toolkit as well as the event management toolkit, if you were thinking of doing a bigger event as well. Talking about no waste, obviously you do not want to waste food at your food waste event. So really make sure to only cook what you need, ask people to bring their own Tupperware, and have a plan for any leftovers, whether that's uncooked, untouched produce, whether those are the meals that you serve, or whether it's even chopped vegetables. Sometimes people prefer any one of those options, but we really recommend having a plan A and a B and a C, and arranging for the delivery or collection of that early on. Domi, I was going to move on to additional activities, unless you felt there was anything else that we wanted to mention on general event prep.
No, I think we're good. I'm excited to talk to everyone about games and Twister and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So the additional activities are what make the event extra creative. So some things that have worked in the past are chef demonstrations. We've also had surplus giveaways where we offer the extra produce, and that's as simple as setting up a table and letting people take a bag. Another great idea is workshops, and this again gets people excited that may not necessarily want to come to a food waste event. We've had jewellery making workshops in the past, cocktail workshops, and it shows people that there's lots going on, and it makes it much more appealing to families as well, where kids may be a little bit more eager for lots to do as well. Another idea is a quiz, which we would be more than happy to offer to any organisers to be translated. It can be as simple as asking questions with multiple answers, and the first one to call out the right answer wins whatever you want. We chose a bottle of beer, and it worked really nicely. So there are endless ideas for additional activities. You could have a competition, maybe a rap competition, as we have had. You can see bottom right in New York City. Another idea is to make a fun photo booth, which you can see bottom left. And the picture top right is a fun example where we actually had a cook-off, and you offer two chefs the exact same ingredients, and you let them battle it out, and people vote at the end on their favorite dish. So I think those are a few of the additional activities. We have a specific toolkit on this to get your creative juices flowing, and more than happy to help out on any of the logistics if people want further guidance on this. Domi, did you have anything else to add? I was thinking that we could then go on to speaking about the further resources, as we very quickly are coming up to the end of this webinar.
I think that's a good place to take this next. Thanks. As I mentioned before, I'm not being particularly useful because Pascal has got everything sorted, but hopefully I might be able to answer a few questions at the end.
Domi, your extra details have been super helpful. Moving on to the resources. So we have toolkits on Disco Chop at large and smaller scale events, but we also have really specific toolkits if you were thinking about organizing a bigger event, or you just wanted to find out a bit more about the specifics of any of these areas. And that includes catering, how to coalesce a steering group, how to think about budgets, as I mentioned before, the additional activities, food sourcing, and the catering as well, which I'm sure many of you would be interested in. More specific documents, we find equipment lists are really helpful to offer, example media alerts, the food waste quiz, and all of those things can be shared with us if you contact the team at Feedback. We recommend that you email hello@feedbackglobal.org, and we'd be more than happy for a quick session as well on any questions. I want to draw everyone's attention to this video as well, which maybe you can watch after, and it, on top of summarizing what we've just been through, it really beautifully visually shows how a disco shop feels and the energy there as well. So I realize we have a few minutes left, but if anyone did have any questions, it would be great to voice them now. Equally, if there are no questions and people are feeling shy, they're welcome to email them to us after as well.
Okay, well, maybe I'll ask a question then, whilst people may be shy. If, for example, we don't have a connections to chefs, and there is a requirement for a sort of someone with a catering license to serve the food. What networks do you think who should we approach if, say, the Jamie Oliver types aren't answering our emails? Who would be the best way, the best first port of call for us to connect to chefs?
That is a really good point, and we haven't chatted about chefs very much on the webinars. I think going back to the types of organisations which we have found immensely helpful and giving and really excited about the events, local community kitchens are really often engaged, and they have great chefs who are really used to dealing with very different circumstances day to day, and they know how to cook in big quantities. Um, so service agencies, local community kitchens, and any charities that offer food to hungry mouths, I think is a great place to start. Um, I think that the big name chefs and people that are less well known but they're used to working on the ground are all both really valuable to have involved. And so reaching out to as many people as possible is great. Um, I think that if there are any other questions, maybe they could be emailed over after. Domi, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on things that we. Oh, I've got someone has just commented saying thank you for the webinar. That's very kind. I think if there are no questions for the moment, perhaps we can wrap it up as we're quickly coming up to the end, and people can send them over after. I will emphasize that we so appreciate you joining today, and that please do send over questions. No question is silly when you're organising a disco shop. So, yeah.
Yeah, just to say that there is a really active online community around disco soups and disco chops, and there's a Facebook group called Disco Soup Crew. So there's a fan page that you can like, but there are also groups for the international community, for people in France, and also local groups like in London, and different countries have local groups. So it's a really good forum as well, where you can just introduce yourself and sort of get to know the other sort of activists around the world who are working on events and who are interested in the same issues, and who may already have found answers to the questions that you're grappling with. So in addition to us, there's a whole network of crazy food waste activists out there who are really great sort of support network, and also great place for sort of inspiration and connecting to the bigger movement. And the final thing I will say, which we don't think we mentioned, is that it's really important, worth collecting everyone's email addresses at the event, because then you can have a ready-made list of people who might want to come to the next one and who will want to get involved further. So giving them an email maybe a few days after the event with photos and saying, do you want to help us organise the next Disco Soup, or something bigger, or something else, or a debate, or whatever. That's how you sort of get things started. So email collection is an important thing.
Really good point. Thank you, Domi. On that note, I want to say thank you for joining, and another big thanks to the Rockefeller Foundation for helping us put together these toolkits, and we really hope that you will find them useful. So another little poke for anyone to send an email and ask for those toolkits. Great. Thanks,
well,
everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day or evening, wherever in the world you are all. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.